You talk about a study in your book, I think, where they put men and women in a room with nothing to do
Right.
and some electrodes, and a large percentage of them ended up shocking themselves to pass the time than just be alone, right?
Right.
Can you talk about that study and what does that tell us?
Yeah, so this was a study done by Timothy Wilson where they put people in a room and they said there's nothing in this room to do except for we're going to put a band on your arm and it's going to be connected to a button that you can press on. This button will give you a painful electrical shock. Something like 60% of men and about 20% of women administer the shock. That we are so uncomfortable doing nothing that we just want to feel something. We need some kind of sensation. And this is by design. I think one of the things that bothers me, I think, by some self-help experts is that they kind of preach this gospel that somehow if you're not happy all the time, if you're not satisfied with your life, somehow something's wrong with you. And it turns out that evolutionarily speaking, nothing could be further from the truth. That our species is designed to be perpetually perturbed. Right? We have this instinct of feeling bored to prod us to go do something, to go search, to find better resources, to improve our lot in life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That we can harness that, right? This is the same impulse that helps us develop life-changing medicine, helps us invent new things, helps us shoot for the moon. It comes from that desire for more. So I don't think the answer to all of our problems is to not want, to not crave, to not desire. I think the answer is to channel these internal triggers towards traction rather than distraction.
Right. And most of us go toward the distraction these days, especially with the availability of these digital devices. Because, like you said, a lot of times people are checking your Facebook feed and your Instagram because you're anxious or depressed or all of these things that are the discomfort, like you said, that causes you to go there to just take you out of that state.
That's right, because we form these habits by trying to, by learning what provides relief. I mean, if there's one thing that our brain is incredibly good at is pattern matching. So if the brain feels discomfort and then finds something that can relieve that discomfort, that's what it forms the habit around. We actually know that, that the reason we even have brains, the reason animals evolved brains was for movements. If you look at some of the most simple organisms, freshwater snails, for example, have a 2-neuron brain system. And one brain, one neuron tells them whether food is available, and the other cell tells them if they're hungry. That's all their brain does all day. And why does it do that? To tell them, keep moving and find food. If you are hungry, and if you're hungry, eat it, and if you're not, don't eat it. And that's all. That's why we have motion. That's why we have movement in the first place, is because the brain spurs us through these uncomfortable emotional states. So how do we relate that to our own lives? We need to understand that if we are to fight distraction, if we are to be the kind of people who do what we say we're going to do, we only really have two choices. We can either fix the source of the discomfort in our life, whatever it is that's causing us this pain, or we need tactics to cope with the discomfort that we can't alleviate on our own. For example, part of being human is that part of the human condition is that you can't solve every problem in your life. You can't even, I would argue, you can't even keep yourself from feeling those feelings. What you can do is change how you react to your emotions. And so that's the really important part, is either fixing the source of the problem where you can, or learning tactics to cope with that discomfort in a healthier manner.
Okay, and fixing the source of the problem is maybe your next book, maybe about stoicism and meaning of life and purpose.
I would argue those are ways to cope with the problem.
Okay.
I don't agree with this idea that you can meditate all your problems away, or that you can even rationalize all your problems away. Sometimes you need to get up off your butt and fix the problem. Whether it's trouble at home, whether it's a workplace culture. There's a whole section in the book about dysfunctional workplace cultures and how we know that there are a confluence of two factors in the workplace that are leading to causal relationship with anxiety and depression disorder in the workplace. So if I said, what type of work environment leads to depression, anxiety disorder? When I started studying this stuff, I thought, okay, well, it's probably a depressing job, a sad job, right? It's working in a mortuary, or I don't know, having to be a veterinarian and put dogs to sleep. That must be very sad. But it turns out what you do has nothing to do with the rate of depression and anxiety. It's all about the environment you do it in. And we know that a certain type of work environment with a confluence of two factors, work environments that ask employees to have high expectations coupled with low control. That is the type of work environment that is literally driving us crazy. High expectations plus low control. By the way, if people have high expectations plus high control, they're fine. They like their jobs. It's when we have low control that we start having these problems with our emotional well-being and psychological well-being.
So autonomy is really important.
Very important. And what's interesting is that when people do not feel a sense of autonomy, what do? They grasp for it any way they can, sending more emails, calling superfluous meetings, and that just makes the problem worse for everyone. So that's the kind of problem that, look, if you don't fix the source of the problem, a crappy workplace culture, you are still going to get distracted. You sometimes have to fix that problem. But again, we can't fix every one of our problems. Sometimes we have to learn tactics to cope with it. And so that's where I would recommend some of these other techniques that I describe in the book, from acceptance and commitment therapy, other techniques to learn tactics to cope with that, those internal triggers in a healthier way.